The tritone is probably one of the most commonly used chord substitutions in jazz. If you don't have a good understanding it, if you can't hear it, if you can't spot it on charts, then you're really missing out on one of the most common harmonic movements that you get. And today's video is the first of 3 videos on the tritone. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how to understand and find the tritone interval, why it works, apply it to the major and minor 2-5-1, show you a couple examples of it in use. Let's get into the backstory of the tritone. The first thing you need to understand about the tritone is an interval. And it's an interval which can go by several names, which can cause confusion. Why does it go under all these names? Well, if we took a G scale, the tritone sits between the 4th and the 5th, hence calling it a diminished 5th, a flat 5, or an augmented 4th. So if we go G, A, B, C, that's the 4th note of the G scale, there's the tritone D flat sat between C and D. And that's the sound of the tritone interval, sometimes referred to as the devil's interval. And as a start point, you need to know this interval from the E string. So if you find your root on the E string, I've got a G here, then it will be a fret higher on the string beneath. And if I do that anywhere, I'm making tritone intervals. So these are all tritone intervals. If you play it at the same time, you can hear it's quite an ugly sound. When we have the prefix tri in front of a word, it normally means 3. So what does that mean in relation to tritone? Well, it's the fact that it's 3 tones away from G. So G to D flat, if we go G to A, that's 1 tone. G to B, that's 2 tones. G to D flat is 3 tones. That's hence the prefix tri. And the G to the B flat is also 6 semitones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 away from G, and cuts the chromatic scale exactly in half. Now, an important thing to understand about the tritone relationship is that it's a reciprocal relationship. So we just established that D flat is the tritone of G. If you find the note D flat and find that tritone, use that interval shape to find the tritone on the next string, the note on the A string is a G also. So D flat is a tritone of G, and G is a tritone of D flat. So it's a kind of buy one get one free. And I've made a PDF with all the tritone pairs on for you for easy reference. But you'll get used to them as you explore this more for yourself. So the tritone is an interval, and it's a tense interval. And although you can find it in several chord types, it's most at home and thought about in terms of its relationship with dominant chords. Let's take a G7, where we've got G, B, D, F. There's an actual tritone interval within this. The B to the F. There. Take a D flat 7, so let's go to G's tritone. D flat, F, G, B. There's that same tritone the other way round. F to B this time instead of, here it was B to F. And up here it's F to B. So we get a tritone interval within the dominant chord itself. And notice there, G, B, D, F, that's 1, 3, 5, 7, D flat, F, A flat, B, is the 3rd and the 7th of each chord, which is the same. G is the 3rd of, B is the 3rd of G7, B is the 7th of D flat 7, F is the flat 7 of G7, F is the 3rd of D flat 7, so it's the 3rd and 7th of each chord just swapping round. So we've established how to find the tritone interval on the E string, and you could work that out on other strings as well. Just at the point of crossing the B string, you'd have to change the shape. And we've also established that within the dominant chord there's a tritone interval. So what we need to do next is try to put this into the context of progression with the 2-5-1. Now the natural home for the tritone for me is the 2-5-1, and it's where we want to look at it first. And what we want to do is substitute the dominant chord, the 5th chord in that progression, with its tritone. So take a 2-5-1 in the key of C, which is D minor 7, G7, C major 7. We need to swap out the G7 and build the tritone, find the interval, G to D flat, and we can play D flat 7 instead, remembering that G7 and D flat 7 share 2 of the notes, giving us this. 2 chord, D minor 7, what we call the flat 2-7, or the tritone, D flat 7, C major 7. So what's the effect of that sub? Let's go back to the plain way. That was G7. Works fine, so that's good. I think this way though, with the tritone, it's a bit tastier, it's a bit more interesting. There's that nice fall into the C major 7, I think. The real effect of it is the bass line changes from this to one of chromatic movement and fall. So it's a more efficient way of getting to the one chord. Let's try that with 3-note voicing. So that sounds nice. Let's try that with the root on the E string. So D minor 7, D flat 7, C major 7, and 3-note voicings. So it's a bit more mellow. You could also get this in the quick 2/5, where the 2 and the 5 only get half a bar each. So you could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, with the tritone becoming 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and with any of the other voicings I've shown earlier too. The other reason I think this works is you get inside, outside, inside. So like the D minor 7 2 chord sounds in, then we get that odd sound. Then it's resolved by going to the C major 7, and that's always a big thing in jazz, tension followed by resolution. But it's always about the notes and how they're moving into the next chord, so, and how they're coming from the previous chord for that matter too. So if we take that D flat 7, when it's falling down into C major 7, you know, the D flat obviously goes down a semitone to C, the A flat goes down a semitone to G, the B stays the same, the F on the top goes down a semitone to a E. So there's loads of real close resolutions, which is for me why it works. So, you know, as I've shown you, get used to it on the A string like that, and then on the E string with what other voicings you like to use. Now, if you remember earlier, I said that the tritone is a buy one get one free situation. It's got a reciprocal relationship. So G is the tritone of D flat and D flat is the tritone of G. Now we've just used D flat to replace G. We now need to try to use G to replace D flat. Now remember that we're talking about a 2-5-1 and we're talking about dominant, so we need to work out what key D flat is the dominant of. And if you play a G flat major scale, you will get D flat as the 5th note. Take the chords in that key of G flat major, not one we play in too often thankfully. We get G flat major, A flat minor, B flat minor, C flat major, D flat dominant 7th, E flat minor, F minor 7 flat 5, back to G flat major. So and this would give us a 2-5-1 being A flat minor 2 chord, D flat 7 5 chord, G flat major 1 chord. With the tritone we could go A flat minor, G7, tritone sub, into G flat major 7. So as you can see, those tritones can work for each other. So if you see D flat 7 where you might expect a G7, that's the tritone. If you see G7 where you might expect D flat 7, that's the tritone taking place. Now this is only half the story. We need to do the same with the minor 2-5-1. So let's take a minor 2-5-1 in an easy key. Let's go A minor. So 2-5-1 in A minor is B minor 7 flat 5, E7 into A minor. So what chord do we want to tritone? Obviously the dominant, which is the E7. So let's find an E on the E string. There you go, fret 12. Tritone relationship, go one string down, semitone higher. That note is a B flat. So we can use B flat 7 instead of E7. And again, we're going to get a chromatic bass line. So this time we're going to go B minor 7 flat 5, B flat 7 into A minor. So again we get boom, boom, boom. The bass line going down chromatically B flat A instead of B, A, E. The reciprocal nature of this relationship will work in the minor key as well. So we need to know what key B flat 7 is the 5 in, and it's the dominant in E flat minor. So if we had F minor 7 flat 5, B flat 7 into E flat minor, that's a minor 2-5-1 in the key of E flat minor going F, B flat, E flat. So what we're going to do is get rid of the B flat 7 and put an E there, E7. So we'd have F minor 7 flat 5, E7 into E flat minor. You know, so we've got major 2-5-1s, minor 2-5-1s. Another common place is on the rhythm changes B section. So take the B section tile, got rhythm, D7 2 bars, G7 2 bars, C7 2 bars, F7 2 bars. Referred to as dominant chords cycling in fourths. Now what you can do here is you can just go chromatically down. So D7, keep that. Tritone the next one, G7, we know that from earlier the tritone is D flat. C7, let's keep that one so we can keep going down chromatically. And then the tritone of F is a B. So that gives us D7, D flat 7, C7, B7. So give us da, 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 instead of, so there's less movement, that chromatic 4. The next chord's a B flat, so you'd be a semitone above that, would work out well. And another thing you hear sometimes is using these tritones as passing chords. So check this out. So I'm going to go D7, and then here. So what I did there, D7, and then on the last beat before the change to G7, I put an A flat 7, which is the tritone of D, G7, then on the last beat of the G7, I go to a D flat 7, which is G's tritone, which falls into the C7, tritone of C is F sharp, lands us into F. So it gives a nice da-da sort of chromatic 4. I didn't write, that's not on the notation, but I put a B7 before the B flat. So you'll see it used like that as sort of a little stab on the last beat of the bar, or just before you go into the next chord sometimes, which is quite cool. And you can always combine tritones. So say go back to the 2-5-1, you could go D minor 7, G7, D flat 7, C. That works too. We finish off with 2 examples, one jazz and one popular. Got this example from a classic Latin jazz standard. So starting chord 1. Go to G7, then we get a 2. Now you'd expect a C7 here, but it goes G flat 7, back to the F6, and back to the tritone. So the dominant chord in the key of F is a C. So where that G flat 7 is, you actually get the you should have a C7 really, but we get the tritone. So here, now, you might get that voiced as a flat, dominant 7, flat 5, actually, like, there. Interesting thing about a dominant 7th flat 5 chord with the tritones, so that G flat, flat 5 chord, G flat, E, B flat, C, compared to a C7 flat 5, it's the same note, C, B flat, E, G flat. So it's like an inversion of each other. And this last example from a popular song. Is the B flat 7. So that went, 1 to 4 to 5. So the E7 being the dominant, same progression again, but substituting the E7 for B flat 7, which then goes to an A minor, I think, in the next part of the song. So there's two examples there, one from jazz, one from popular music. Now this brings me to the question of to sub or not to sub, and by this I mean if you're playing rhythm for someone, you can put tritone substitutions in. So if you're playing a 2-5-1 in C, D minor 7, G7, C, you are at liberty to substitute that dominant chord if you like. But bear in mind, it will always impact others. So whether that be someone singing or playing over the top of you, or how it interacts with the melody, and you kind of have to use your ear to see whether it works. Sometimes if you use it, you might get some strange looks from people. If they're not used to the sound of it, it might throw them. So just beware, context is always key. And listen out for it, when you're listening to jazz, try and listen to that 2-5-1 and hear if you can hear when people are using the tritone. It's also something you can put into your lead guitar playing. If someone's going D minor 7, G7, C, you can think D minor 7, D flat 7, C to create an outside sound without having to use some weird scale. This is the first of 3 videos. In the second video, in our next video, we're going to take a look at what's known as the tritones minor, which takes the tritone up a notch a little bit. I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson. If you've got any questions, as ever, I'll try and clarify anything in the comments beneath. If you want to say thank you for today's lesson, then my link to my Buy Me a Coffee is in the description, as is the link to the resources from today's lesson, freely available PDFs on my website. Hope you gained value from it. I hope I've clarified a few things. Such a cool sound, the tritone, really important thing to get down and understand, and hopefully these lessons will help you do that. Anyway, until next time, you take care.